What's going on, everybody? It's FREEDO here for Your Overwatch. I want to stress at the beginning of the video, this is not an April Fool's joke. This video just landed coincidentally, and I'm looking down, it's April 1st. I'm like, whoa, people are going to think I'm trolling. No. Got the chance to talk to my buddy Samito, who just won Jayne's Tournament of Future Champions, so I invited him on to sort of break down and explain why GOATS isn't dead, and in fact, he'd say it's better. Today's video, we're mostly discussing the higher end side of the meta. I've got more videos planned during the week aimed at helping just regular ranked play. But a quick tip for you, from playing this patch a lot myself and teasing out what the cutting edge pro meta is going to be, I think two heroes that really stick out like a sore thumb for me in ranked are Wrecking Ball and Brigida, oddly enough. A lot of people think Brigida is just dead in the water, but with her massive buff, I think a lot of times in ranked, you're better off playing her almost in any slot. Like, she's better now. I don't think you should be playing without her unless you have a really serious reason not to. And then on the other end, because so many people are playing a lot of DPS, although it's very difficult to play, Wrecking Ball, I think, is very strong. But we'll talk more about that as the week progresses. Be sure to check out, link to the description, Samito's stream. He gets quite a lot of viewers and streams to YouTube, so it's a format you're already on. Watch him play ranked. And as well, special shout out to Jayne, who hosted the Tournament of Future Champions. We're going to be showing background footage of Samito's team playing on the new patch in that tournament. So of course, you should be supporting Jayne anyway. He'll be linked down there as well. And without further ado, let's start the discussion. Just to jump right into it, the reason why I'm excited to talk to you is because I've been reading a lot online about the meta and the patch and how things are shaping up, and everybody tells me GOATS is dead. Like, the speed nerf is so significant that, like, GOATS just dies now. Isn't that the case? Like, you got good news for me, right?
No. Unfortunately not. Actually, GOATS is stronger this patch, to be honest with you. The CC buffs really gave more reward to Bridget and Lucio, so as the brig player for my team, which we actually just won Tournament of Future Champions, the like tier 3 team with some of the lower end contenders teams in it as well, on the new patch. It was the first like kind of bigger tournament on this patch, and guess what comp was run almost 24/7? GOATS, GOATS, GOATS. Except this time you see a lot more Winston variants, just because the armor reduction, Winston actually feeds Primal really, really fast, and if your Winston's good with Primal, it makes more sense to run Winston, because on top of that, the one weakness to GOATS, as we saw from Chengdu, was that they run range DPS and they spam targets down, but if Winston is better now, you have a better shot at contesting those DPS. On top of that, you have more consistent boops from Bridget, especially Bridget, because if a Sombra's beaming someone down or a Tracer, you can knock them way farther away, right? And you just keep your heals up. GOATS, nothing's changed. The only thing that's changed is that Ryan GOATS cannot engage at the same speed, but it really didn't change anything because Bridget's still in the game, so it doesn't really matter. Man,
well, that's terrible. Who could have foreseen this happening? You know what I mean? Like, how how can we ever read the patch notes and know that this might be the case? Okay, I'm being a bit trollish here because obviously I was worried that this might be the case, and I wonder how we want to split off into why this is a problem and maybe solutions. So the first thing that comes to mind is that what Blizzard did is nerf Ryan GOATS, actually, because Lucio, definitely the speed nerf hurts them, but that just means you play Winston GOATS more, which is bad for DPS comps anyway. So we're almost like in a world where DPS comps are less pickable because there's less Ryan on the field. It used to be they have Ryan, well, we can exploit it with DPS. Now they're just probably always going to have Winston. I do see teams trying to run the Ryan, and I'm wondering why, because it looks like it just gets styled on by everything now.
It's really map dependent. So like on third point Numbani, you're still going to see Reinhardts, and when it comes down to Overwatch League, if your main tank player is better at Ryan, like, you can still get away with it, but Winston is definitely, so as you know about, you know, the whole rock, paper, scissors compositions, right? When in Overwatch League this stage, it was kind of a big, like, you know, if you pick paper and they pick scissors with their comp, you just lose, right? There's not much you can do about that. The safer bet has become Winston over Ryan because, you know, the speed boost nerfs, and, you know, Winston's now buff against armor, so you just get Primal really, really fast. Fundamentally, the only thing that's changed in this meta where you won't see GOATS is bunker triple DPS on some maps like Paris, you'll see bunker comps. Hanamura, you might see bunker comps. Horizon, you might see bunker comps. But only, we're talking first point defense 2CP, and if they happen to roll you, they snowball you with ults. So, you know, the disadvantage still exists with those comps. One thing that really confuses me from Blizzard, I've been a big advocate about reworking Bridget. You know this. A lot of people know this. She is the main problem with the game right now, in that this triple support comp will never stop until Bridget's kit gets a fundamental rework. One of the biggest reasons that I always talk about Bridget so much is because Bridget is the hero that takes the role of the flex DPS, right? If you want flex DPS to come back into the meta, flex DPS means like projectile DPS, Genji, Hanzo, Pharah, Doomfist, etc., etc. If you want those heroes to be played, they need to offer more to the game and to team compositions than Bridget does. And that just will not happen, because if you can run Bridget, you have instant burst healing that requires no aim on a 5-6 second cooldown. It's unbelievable. On top of that, AoE healing and incredible damage denial potential. In terms of 1v1 capabilities, a DPS hero simply does not offer more to the team than Bridget does. She's got a 500 HP shield. I mean, you know the rest. I don't need I go on? No.
All right. Whenever I talk to a high-level player or pro players and everything, they really cut to the chase on this type of stuff, and it sort of blows me away, and I think a lot of viewers as well start to ask a lot of questions. Maybe like slow it down a bit for me here, and maybe go like step by step why certain things don't work. So for example, what a lot of people assumed was with the speed boost nerf going away, well, we know, okay, that hurts Rein, but why doesn't it hurt Winston Goats as much? Like, why does that comp still function and do everything it needs? Why isn't the Lucio nerf significant? Or is it just the trade-off of the boops now sort of solidifying the fortress? That's how I sort of saw it, where like the death ball now, the CC's so good that you just get everything off you, but still, wouldn't range damage be able to rain down on them? For example, I think I watched on your Turn at Future Champions game where you're running that Chengdu Hunters comp with the on Hanamura with Pharmacy over the top. Speed boost really struggles up against Pharah, it looks like. Those projectiles are easier to hit, it's harder for them to close the distance, and they did eventually have to switch to dive. Why don't we see that progression more often, and maybe give some examples?
They ran Rein. They tried to run Rein to that. Like, you can't, like, the only thing that's changed about Goats is that Rein is just way less effective. Because, you know, like you said, the speed boost nerfs means that Reinhardt spends more times in the choke, right? But if you sub that out for a Winston, you have the benefit of the dive comp still with Winston Diva. But instead of running Lucio Anna, you have the Discord Orb for the Pharah, right? Which means not only is your Diva the only person that can go on her now with the Zen poking around, but you also have a Winston jumping in there too. So you still get all the benefits of dive, right? With the Winston instead of the Rein, but the sustain of Goats with that. So it still doesn't make any sense to run to mirror DPS unless, you know, what you will see different, which I will credit Blizzard for, I guess, is that bunker comps can be run, okay? That's because, you know, right, there's less damage denial with dive, right? Because there's not a giant shield, but there is more engage on you, right? And it's kind of the drop off.
Oh yeah, that's cool. Another thing that I've noticed too with this Winston change, it might be sort of unforeseen, although, of course, then it does make Bunker better, but in a way, it's like Winston's the biggest winner in all of this, because not only does he cleave Goats really hard, he kind of farms Orisa better than I think he should have. Like, I was imagining, all right, she has this move speed buff, it'll make her a bit better, but to me, that change doesn't seem to matter anyway, because she wants to stay in the same spot, like, regardless, you know. She can move a bit faster, so maybe up against Genji, she's a little bit better in the duel, where she feels like she can shoot rather than just stand still and or you know, run away and not shoot at all. But Winston doing that damage through armor makes him better up against Brig, even Orisa, you know, cleaving through that. So I'm wondering what breakpoints need to happen to try to get us into a place where multiple things could be run. And you got back to Brigida, and at some point in this conversation, I do want to zone in on that, and that being like sort of the final straw of this conversation. Is there no other option that we have other than to look to Brigida specifically?
The only thing you could do to enable DPS again is to nerf Sound Barrier. Against Goats, the only thing, you know, in Season 10, Brigida was introduced. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. But the reason why it wasn't run exclusively was, okay, Hanzo's damage was busted, but it was because of the Grav Dragon combo, right? It was because if they wanted to run that tanky comp with 3 supports, the big drop-off to it is that the DPS ultimates would farm quickly and beat the comp, right? That's the drop-off. That used to be how it was played. The win condition for you on Goats was to get eliminations on the DPS and win the fight with that death ball before the DPS could build their ults, and that's how it was balanced, right? it could go either way. The way to outplay the comp is to build your ults and combo before they can run you over. But now, with the buff Sound Barrier and Transcendence, it doesn't matter what ults you use into it, right? Like, both support ults survive combos. Like, Grab Dragon doesn't work against goats because they can either beat or trans, and both of them survive with ease. It's not even close. And you had a clip of it on Twitter where you just drop the beat, Zarya uses a bubble, and you come out full health against a Grab Dragon combo. That's kind of crazy. The same goes for Grab Molten Core, or, you know, even Grab Tire. You can save bubbles and use trance. Like, I think a nerf to Sound Barrier would help. I think Bridget is the #1 priority because, you know, she's in the flex DPS role. She is the hero that is giving more value to goats than any DPS could. On top of that, you have a Winston bubble on right click while you're self-healing and insta-packing enemies, or allies rather, that are low with burst healing. It's just too much, and you can't overcome that. I think the two heroes I need to look at are Sound Barrier and definitely Brigida.
Now let's move on to some other of the changes. There's heroes that I'm excited to talk about, but maybe aren't that effective yet. But so Baptiste, and then also, how come the new Junkrat isn't our savior? Okay, I thought a Junkrat here came to destroy the goats meta. Why isn't he running every comp?
Listen. I am a big advocate of the J Silly. Okay, I beg. Unfortunately, due to the RNG of the tournament, you didn't get to see our planned comps for, you know, the new heroes, which are effective. I can't spoil them now, unfortunately, but they're coming. Don't worry. Junkrat's great. He's in a great spot now. The change to him will make him a lot more viable because according to statistics, right? When the Hanzo projectile speed got increased, average Hanzo players in GM's crit hit went from 7 to 8% to 13 to 14% just by that 15% projectile speed increase, okay? Junkrat got a 25% increase on his projectile speed?
It was 20, went up to 25. Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so the amount of actual mines you will be able to hit, just his accuracy is going to go way up, which means he's going to get more damage off more consistently, which means that you can play him into a goats comp and not hope to God that your mines hit, because you're kind of just shooting in the dark, right? But now you can spam it. His nades work like scatter now, so like projectile players, aka your flex DPS, your Bridgets, will actually be able to run him in a bunker comp and be effective. So Junkrat, big winner. You will see him be played on maps like Anubis. You won't see him on Paris because teams would rather play Torbjorn because you would rather have the coverage of the turret and to bait a dive, because where Torb is good compared to Junkrat in a bunker comp is that Torb with his E actually can survive dives and blow a Winston up, right? So whenever, like on maps like Hanamura, you won't see Junkrat, you'll see Torbjorn. On maps like Paris where the turret has long LOS and you can set up crossfires, right? So on Hanamura, you set up your bunker top right above on that wooden platform, and then you put your turret on the bridge. The goal of that being your Orisa and your Torbjorn bait the dive to them. The Orisa uses Fortify, you ain't killing her. Torb presses Z, you ain't killing him, while your Ashe is across on the other side with the turret free shooting the dive. But if the dive wants to win, they have to contest the Orisa or the Torbjorn to sustain that. So, you know, maps like that, you'll see a lot of Torbjorn where he's really strong with his new base health. Big winner in this patch. Junkrat you'll see on Anubis where there's a ton of tight, really tight chokes that you need AoE damage, or Riptire can be good. Junk, very good. I'd say he's twice as good this patch as he was last patch, at high levels.
While we're on Junk, and he's one of those guys that I think, one of the DPS characters that I think benefited the most from CC, but how come they're not benefiting more than like Lucio and Brig, right? Why aren't we seeing Pharah and Junk and Ashe and all these other characters with DPS that have CC not be more effective up against even Winston goats and things like that?
In Overwatch League or ranked?
Both, I guess. However you want to explain it.
Both. So in lower ranks, Junkrat will be much better. In higher ranks, it won't matter as much just because Diva players are that good. And now with Winston, instead, you have 2 forms of damage denial, and better CC from Brig. So you have better CC from Brig, which means you can actually knock these players off of high grounds and deny the damage on top of this ridiculous sustain that exists. Now, instead of running Rhine and being stationary, you have Winston jump in and bubble, which blocks, 1 to 2 Junkrat mines. Then after that, the Diva full matrixes. So honestly, you have less time to shoot into a choke. Even with that 20% speed nerf or whatever, that might add up to like one extra second, right, in a choke point for that team. But if they run Winston instead of Rhine, they probably get an extra 2 seconds of damage denial on the Junkrat. So, yeah, it's not going to make that much of an impact ultimately, you're not going to want to play him over the Brig. And then okay, he comes out, then Brig has a 500 HP shield to block after that. So you can't really do much to it.
I guess it all comes back to we were better off when when Ryan was strong and lose. It's like Junk would prefer, as weird as this sounds, Junk would prefer Ryan to be more played and Speed to be better so that the team at least was all grouped up and the barrier wasn't in his face. Because once Winston dives in on the Junk, then the barrier comes down and he's not really hitting anything effective and he's zoned out.
It's easier to trap a Ryan. It's easier to trap a Ryan than a Winston. So, you know, like when they were running Ryan, you knew, like, okay, think about Anubis. You knew that they would have to go left or right. So you could put your trap in the left room and try to bait them there. Okay, say they go right instead. Okay, then you put your trap like on the right side. But now the Winston just jumps on your team. You have to hope one of the squishies blindly runs around the corner into a trap and you can kill them. Because if they dive the trap, the Winston lands on it and bursts it down. So there's not, it's just, you know, unfortunate. But that's where Torb benefits with Winston because now they don't have the Ryan shield. So Torb is better in this patch than Junk, I would say, in Bunker. He's just more consistent. It's just like on Anubis, Junk is better. You know, but you'll see Bunker comps run to more success.
Because Torb is better against the Winston. Is that what you're saying?
He's better. He's better against dive, and there's no shield to poke out the turret. Like with Ryan, you could at least shield like the turret or more of the damage, but now you can't.
All right. What about the new hero, Baptiste? How's he doing?
I wish I could have scrimmed him against contenders teams to give a more accurate insight. I think Baptiste is really strong, could be really strong, but I think his kit would be better off if they flipped his ult and his E so that in Bunker comps, he could actually mirror Zenyatta. Why would you have, you know, like there's no way that Baptiste can keep up with the 25% Discord orb that can go on anyone on command. Right, on top of that, Zenyatta applies a ton of damage. If he could put his defense or his amplification matrix and say maybe move it around, have it be less effective but on a cooldown, that way, you know, if they come out on a Winston and you have a Bastion or a Junkrat and a Bunker comp, you put it up, and then they actually can get consistent value from it. The ult just lasts for such a little time period and is so hard to shoot through, it's just not very good. And Immortality Field is decent, but you won't really need that Immortality Field in a Bunker comp unless they're using their ultimates. So, you know, it would be better to have that flipped around, have him be able to amplify his DPS more on top of Mercy. That way you can really, you know, let Junkrats shine against the Winston. That would help the DPS Bunker comps a lot. Other than that, his kit's decent, but I don't think he offers more consistent value than Lucio, Zen, and Brig. No supports in the game do, so hard to compare them.
Yeah, good points. I wonder, though, is he any good with a Bastion? That was where I imagined, like, you need something that's really insane that you can keep alive with an Immortality Field when, like, the commitment comes in.
Bastion's not very good right now, to be honest with you. There's not really any Bunker comps that run him, just because there's no reason to run Bastion over Ashe in this patch, and Bastion competes for your hit scan slot. He's not mobile, and Junkrat, Torb, and Ashe all have really strong abilities to survive and CC the dive, as you talked about. Well, Bastion doesn't really have one, making him really susceptible to Anonade and just a consistent dive. Like, why would you run that over an Ashe who can shoot herself in the air, dynamite floats and get a ton of value, farm Bob, have a 7th man to contest the point, give more CC? Honestly, Ashe is the hit scan spot, so yeah, he doesn't offer more value than Ashe, so there's no point to run Bastion.
It's rough when you're comparing to all these other insane support characters where if he's stuck shooting a shield most of the time, well, you might as well have a Discord orb so that it penetrates that and then you can have something, you know, follow up through that. Zen's ult's better. It's tough out there for Baptiste, and it's tough for Blizzard designing these heroes because, of course, you know what happened originally when everyone complained, well, dive meta's too good. Blizzard, you must do something about dive, and then, you know, they've designed a character specifically to deal with that, and then now we've been trying to walk that back and sort of peel from the repercussions of that decision. Listen. So Baptiste distinctly was not aimed to deal with goats, and so therefore he sort of just doesn't compete in against it or with anything, it seems.
Yeah, there's no reason to pick him over the Zen. It's just too strong.
All right, so what are some things that would make Brigida still playable, like for in the ranked context, but deal with her in this way? Because here's the weird thing about Brigida, right? At least in my games, I can't beg a DPS to pick Brigida nowadays. I'm like, please, just pick Brigida. It's like, no, we all think DPS are good again, right? Goats is dead. I'm not playing Brigida anymore. That was all last season. But in reality, like, it's just as good as it used to be, right?
It's better. It's better. Bridget is better this patch than last patch. Like as a Brigida player, okay? I played her on OPR against contenders teams. I've played her on this patch. the amount of bailout you have for your main tanks is absolutely unbelievable. It is crazy. They run at you, and I'm not kidding. It doesn't matter. Like, I can bail out that's like how you carry on Brig, is you enable your tanks and you bail them out. Right? That's why the best Brigs are so good, is they know exactly when to use their flail. You can completely control the fights by using that flail. She is, I would say, twice as good this patch as
That's pretty crazy. And the insane thing with this, though, is that in some ways, I think I like the boop changes, but Blizzard, I think, did it for Baptiste. I think if they put those boop changes in back in dive meta, we might see an entirely different state of play, because being able to CC is just so powerful, with it being so reliable. And I showed in a video a couple weeks ago where XQC sort of pantomimed how it used to work. You used to be able to like brush off a boop and keep going, where Winston would able to keep pressing W. But now the only way you do that if he's got a bubble attached to him, right? And then, oh, well, that's fine because we'll just run Goats anyway. So he could still do that in Goats comp somewhat, but outside of that in dive, it's much more punishing, where you actually can get things off you. And it's an interesting point about the way Overwatch is balanced, is that there's so many heroes that have to close the distance, Tracer, both the dive tanks, Reinhardt, whoever, right, where they really need to outposition you and get on you, and then all of a sudden we're just like gifted this like supreme boop meta.
Where was this last year? Why would they not do this instead of adding just a horrible addition to this? Brigida is a disaster, and it's safe to say a year later at this point, where she's been nerfed every patch and is still a must pick in pro play, how does this make it to live? And how does it stay is the more important question. Like, people make mistakes. It happens, okay? The problem comes when you do not correct them quickly.
It sucks because Blizzard sort of thought there might be a tanky meta building and was trying to prep for it, but in their defense, pro players are crazy, okay? They like grind this comp, and the pros have gotten so good at Goats that, in my opinion, they developed it to a state that I don't know if anybody could have predicted. So as much as I kind of called the boop changes helping Goats, I was definitely wrong at multiple turns for Goats being counterable at earlier periods, because it was just like teams would just get better and better at Goats, right? It's like, oh, we can run, you know, this bunker stuff. Oh, we'll just improve our pathing and it won't matter, right? So it's a bit on both sides, right? The pros are breaking the game, so to speak, and Blizzard's trying to pick up the pieces on the other end. So, but it has taken a long time as well. So with that being the case, what are things that have to be looked at with Brigida? You pretty much have said like everything's insane on her kit. Is she at the point now where it would be more healthy for the game to be considered a DPS, even since just getting played as one anyway, and just swap her over to the DPS role and maybe rework her healing? Because here's the thing I thought of, right? She's getting played like that anyway in this tanky brawl comp, but she has almost as good of healing as a normal support. However, in that tanky brawl, it's better, right? In the tanky brawl comp, it is better than a lot of the other healers. I would say it like this: if Soldier 76, if his heal pack was like an aura that stayed forever, or, you know, he could place it down, it was like map wide, like that's how good Brigida is, because she's still a damage dealer and does all the damage rolls that like Soldier would do, but also provides all this other stuff for the team, the CC and protection and healing. It does everything, right? So what's a good way to go about this? Yeah, and of course the stun, which is the best focus fire tool we've ever seen in the game ever.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good. It's really tough, man. Like, honestly, like, even I've put a lot of thought into it. The first thing they would have to do is decide, okay, do we want her in the support category or do we want her in the damage category? Because those two, that decision will completely alter the way her kit needs to be designed further, right? I think both can work and both are optimal. I would be more okay with her going to the DPS category, to be honest with you. I think that, because as you know, I've talked to you about this a lot, like off camera. You finish with gold healing in Goats on Brig, because just how much sustain that she has. I think if she self-healed, not team-healed, the same way Soldier Biofield works, if she was specifically designed to be anti-dive, right? And in that sense, like, they dive, you drop down your biofield, or your Inspire stays in one place, so that the drop off to her is not, okay, we can just run in with our Brig and run over a DPS comp of range damage that's supposed to counter her. That, newsflash, it doesn't at all. You have to stay in a spot. That means she'd be good with bunker comps. She would be in kind of Baptiste position, right? And then rework maybe her left click to give her some sort of mid-range damage that'd be more consistent, right? To kind of zone. Like, she should be a very defense-oriented hero in the same way that we used to consider Mei or Torbjorn, right? I think that's the direction they should take her, to where she's anti-dive in a healthy way, where, you know, they dive you, you have to stay in the area to maintain the advantage, and then she can really ward off Tracer, Sombra. You know what would be good for her is maybe giving her E and reworking it to not just burst healing, but it'd be nice to see an ability that cleanses Sombra hack, because you're a big advocate of power creep, and you're right on the money. Sombra's gonna be busted after this next pack, and you will see her run so much in Overwatch League. Genji players, your hero's the worst hero in the game. I hate to break it to you. Stop playing him. Genji is actually considered a throw pick in our scrims. Like I say, can I go Genji? It's actually a throw. You can't do anything on the hero. So why not have her be a zoning DPS that self-heals, that can cleanse hack or cleanse anti-nade? Because, you know, a lot of the times with dive, you have Ana, right? If you could cleanse the anti-nade, you have a healthy ability that answers Sombra, that can answer Tracer, that can answer anti-nade, the same way that Baptiste Immortality Field does, right? That, you know, it's not just, you know, insta-pack your allies, and then you can keep Rally as an ultimate. I think that'd be fine as a DPS, but, you know, that would be a really healthy way to add her kit that, you know, has answers, that kind of responds to enemy movement, and that way you have to be good with cooldown management, but you can't just run over the enemy team.
Yeah, and the thing is, I always suggest things that I don't even know if they'd be enough, right? So even just reducing her shield, like all these things, like if you take one thing in isolation, I think you sort of have to break her in order to break goats. That's the problem. Like if she couldn't heal her team with Inspire or something crazy, or if like her flail didn't proc Inspire, that would be a really big deal, right? Something like that made it totally different. I think the way I like it best right now is her self-sustain with her shield. I personally think is just outrageous. Her personal tiny shield has almost as much health as a Winston bubble, and it's just way harder to focus, meaning that because you only need one small target to stall a point, that means her ability to brawl in a payload and surround it and hide behind it and sustain and come around a corner and survive and regen, it just lasts forever and ever and ever, right? So I think numerically that's just too high, but also as well, we've got all these other problems that you're mentioning, so it's difficult for me to know what's the best thing for them to do. I kind of like the damage route the best, because that's how pros are playing her anyway, you know? And I think if her healing sustain was somewhat similar to what the other heroes that provide healing in the damage slot were, like a little bit more geared towards that way, or half and half, however you want to put it. But either way, she's that flex DPS character, right? And
yeah, exactly.
The further problem with that as well that I see is that even if you do that, then maybe Zen doesn't get run, and instead you have a better healer.
You can't run Zen.
Which is good, though.
Which means you don't have damage.
It means Goats isn't dead, but you need more healing, and then you might lack damage. But it still makes the comp playable and good, right? Like the tank ults are still insane. You still get whatever space you want. You still W all across the map. You know, you still have all that to your disposal. The thing with Goats, it's got, you know, 5 sick attributes, and you start knocking down one, it's like, oh, well, we'll take the focus fire of Discord Orb out because we need more healing, but you still could focus fire and have sick ults and do everything else, right? So that I want them to push it that way, because we're multiple stages away from Goats going away completely. And I'm not even asking for that. I think I would assume that most of us would like to see it be somewhat pickable, but not the top meta comp.
Yeah, of course. Of course. Listen, I've been very vocal about getting rid of the Goats meta. Like, as a flex DPS player, I want to play my DPS. At the same time, comps like that should remain in the game as a cheese, right? Because if you play it properly, you catch a team off guard, you should get rewarded for that. Like, I think there's a place where Goats is healthy, because you used to see quad tank Moira cheeses all the time in Season 9 before Brig came out. And it was annoying to play against, sure, but it could definitely catch teams off guard. And, you know, one thing that I do want to bring up is kind of that snowball effect, right? If you can't play Brig and Goats, or Brig gets nerfed, you can't run Zen. If you can't, because you need more healing. Like, it's incredibly difficult to heal. I mean, it can work, but it's harder. Right? Like, there's just, it's so free to run Goats right now, and I think you kind of hit the nail on the head, but there's one thing that we all should agree on right here, right now. Before we make any major changes to Bridget, she needs to have the same treatment that old Symmetra had. I see no problem, and people on your channel, like, always comment, they're like, well, Brig is bad outside of 3-3, so, you know, it's a poorly designed kit, therefore she should say the same. Well, if she's unplayable as an off support in a 2-2-2 comp, that's all the more reason to rework her, in my opinion. I don't know if you agree with that or not, but let's vault this character. Let's have Blizzard and the community take a hard look at what direction we want to take her, because right now it's not healthy. It does too much. It enables this comp. It overpowers every flex DPS in the game. That's just crazy. So let's vault her, decide where we want to take her, make the healthy changes. The same way, the sim changes were great. I used to hate Symmetra, as a lot of people did. I think the changes they made to her kit were great. I think they should do the same thing with Brig. They're very capable of doing the same thing with Brig, and I really, really hope it happens, because we're going to see a stage 2 of all goats. So have fun.
Yeah, unfortunately. Winston goats, slightly different, and a little bit of bunker on a couple of maps, of course. But so to that point, let's let that point lie, assuming that they'll have to realize that Brigida, something has to be done in order for goats to change, unless you just they keep making other characters worse and worse and worse in goats, but they'll just swap something else in, right? You could nerf Zen into the ground. It's like, okay, well, we'll play Ana and Moira. It doesn't work. Brigida, there's no way to ignore her, in my opinion, but we'll see how that plays out.